Want to call the Finance Committee meeting opening at 6:45. Consideration of claims. Chair would entertain a motion for the approval of claims.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a consideration of claims to be paid in the amount of $986,187.98. The lawn credit card in the amount of $7,734.38. Manual checks in the amount of $753.19. Payroll and liabilities for November 1st and November 14th, 2024 in the amount of $415,342.21 for a total of $1,410,017.76.
I'll second.
Second. Very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anything from Ms. Harris?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. I'd like to point out that included in this finance run is a check in the amount of $406,887.06, and it's to the Wyoming Department of Transportation for air service for the first quarter of this fiscal year. So this covers services from July to September, and again, it was $406,000.
Approximately how much is that a month?
Well, divided by 3, it would be just about $133 approximately a month.
133,
Approximately 133,000.
1,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
May I also address
Please.
address the committee regarding, there's also included in the packet is a reimbursement, a TAD reimbursement request for FAST. In the packet tonight, it's from the Fremont Air Service team, and they're requesting a reimbursement of $5,000 for an approved grant from the Tourism Asset Development, so the TAD monies is what we're giving them. The monies for both FAST and the TAD are managed separately and independently of each other and from all other city funds. And in most instances, when we disperse funds to other entities for TAD, we'll just write a check. But with FAST, Fremont Air Service, that we manage their money and we manage the TAD dollars, we're just requesting an approval for a transfer of $5,000 from one fund to the other to award that money.
And so that is included in the $1,410,000?
It is not, Your Honor. It is in addition to.
Yeah.
It's by itself?
Yes, sir.
Should,
All
yes.
right. But we've just approved it anyway?
No, I think you would need a motion to
No,
approve that.
well, do we need a motion tonight?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the reimbursement of Fremont Air Service FAST?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's for $5,000, correct?
Correct. Do we have any other things?
Your Honor, I believe that's all I have for this evening.
Finance Committee stands adjourned.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to serve and discuss the needs of the city of Riverton. We ask Thee as we do so that we can be blessed with a greater measure of Thy Spirit to be able to make decisions that will better the community for our citizens. We are grateful for those who serve us in multiple different capacities with our first responders as well as our those who are serving in the military. Ask that it please especially bless those who are serving from our Riverton Police Department with the National Guard, and ask that it bless us that we can support and show our support for those who serve us. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Administrative Services Director, Ms. Harris, could you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilmember Dean Peranto.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay Cox.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Bailey.
Absent.
Councilmember Carla Borders.
Here.
Councilmember Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilmember Christy Salisbury.
Here.
Mayor Tim Hancock.
I'm here. I'd entertain a motion to excuse Mike Bailey from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Borders. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. I declare we have a quorum. I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Cox, second by Councilwoman Salisbury. Discussion, amendments. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. I have a proclamation I'd like to read about Small Business Saturday. Whereas the city government of Riverton, Wyoming celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. And whereas according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 34.7 small businesses, 34.7 million, not 34.7. 34.7 million small businesses in the United States. Small businesses represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. Small businesses are responsible for 61.1% of net new jobs created since 1995. And small businesses employ 45.9% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. Whereas 68 cents of every dollar spent at a small business in the U.S. stays in the local community, and every dollar spent at small businesses creates an additional 48 cents in local business activity as a result of employees and local businesses purchasing local goods and services. And whereas 59% of U.S. consumers aware of Small Business Saturday stopped or ate at a small independently owned retailer or restaurant on Small Business Saturday 2023. And whereas Riverton, Wyoming supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as the public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Tim Hancock, Mayor of Riverton, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday, celebrating its 15th year in 2024, and shop small throughout the year. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 19th day of November in the year 2024. I think one of the things that I've heard and I'd like to say is small businesses make a big difference in our community. If you want to be talking about somebody to be supporting your local baseball team, soccer team, whatever it is, our small businesses do it. And so I really appreciate our local owners of small businesses, employees, everyone that's involved, and would encourage you, not just on November 30th, but throughout the year, to shop small. So, thank you. All right, council committee reports and council members roundtable. We'll start with Councilman Peranto.
All right, thank you. Last week, I guess it's been a couple of weeks now, on the 4th of November, I attended the Riverton Fremont County School District 25 Rec Board meeting. We paid bills and received a resignation from Kip Post, who's moving out of town. So the advertising for his replacement will be put out from the school district. I was also out of town and didn't attend the airport meeting last Friday, the 15th, but Mr. Bailey did. He attended in my stead, but he's not here to report on that. So hopefully we'll hear an update from Mr. Eggleston and Mr. Butterfield. And I also, we didn't get a chance last Monday to meet, but I did want to thank all of our veterans, not just those that are in the room, but those in Riverton. You know, our veterans and their families have done a lot for our country, and we absolutely owe them a debt of gratitude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I agree completely with that sentiment.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Cox.
I haven't attended any meetings. I hadn't had any scheduled since our last meeting. I did want to say that driving down Main Street today on my way to this meeting, I appreciate the Christmas lights that are going up. I know that takes a lot of effort and they look really nice. So just wanted to comment on that. It made me happy on my little drive down. So that's it.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman Borders.
Your Honor, I had a paused meeting earlier this evening. We were kind of discussing, you know, present situation. If anyone would like to adopt a pet, they'd be more than happy to talk to you, so give them a call. I also attended the Finance Committee, and I'll let Kyle tell you about that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Larson.
Your Honor, I attended the Solid Waste Committee meeting yesterday. We paid, we're up to about 95% complete on Sandral. And, but that's not really open as a major solid waste area. Lander is still a major portion. And the Lander station that we have built when we shut down Lander in the magic number of 29 or 30. Since we are the major contributor to the waste, and our waste has gone from $85,000 a month to 58 and 45 sometimes. So I'm thinking that probably 31 or 32 is when it's really going to shut down. But anyway, we're almost 70% on the transfer station complete there. So everything is moving along.
Good deal.
But if you know an engineer that's looking for a job at a solid waste district area, they're still looking.
How long have they been looking? That's been
Oh,
months.
just 2 years.
Yeah.
And so we're only spending $250,000 on a consultant that could be, you know, paying a better wage, but we choose to give the money away that way instead. It's always fiscal responsibility
All about
at
that.
its best.
No sarcasm.
You could say we are throwing money away.
Throwing, we are burying it in the garbage pit.
That was punny.
But that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Salisbury.
Your Honor, I attended the Finance Committee earlier this evening, and I had no other committees or meetings scheduled this.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Butterfield.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start with the sad news first, if that's okay.
Sure.
We are sad to report that Mr. Mike Miller has accepted a new opportunity and will be leaving his employment with the City of Riverton. Mike has been a wonderful colleague and a great servant, I think, to our community, and we appreciate the attitude that he's brought to not just our internal team, but also to the community members that he worked with. Anyone who's worked with Mr. Miller knows that he strives for people to succeed. He's dealing with a family issue tonight and therefore is excused from tonight's meeting, but I thought I'd start by wishing Mr. Miller well, but also saying we're incredibly sad to lose him, and it'll be a tough position for us to replace. To that end, we are advertising for a community development director currently, and we'll do our best to move forward as Mike does the same as he's entering into a new opportunity for his professional career. With the bad news out of the way, I'll cover a few other items. I'd like to thank Mia Harris and Max Batista for the work that they put into a meeting that they held last week with all the liquor license holders in the city of Riverton. There were a lot of stakeholders that participated in this meeting, and I found it to be very beneficial to communicate expectations, but also to hear from those licensees that are in town. And we had participation from Fremont County Prevention, WRTA, and also you, Mayor Hancock. So I want to say thank you to them for their work, especially as the renewal period is opening up. And I thought that was a good way to communicate with our community. As we try to provide updates on the police department staffing situation, in addition to the previous reports that I provided, we have 2 patrol officer positions that are in the final stages of their background reviews. These are lateral officers that can transfer into our department as sworn peace officers, and we're looking forward to them completing the very last steps of the background process and application process, and hope to be introducing them to you and the department in the very near future. Along those lines, we also did 6 interviews, or had 6 interviews scheduled today for applicants for patrol. 3 of those scheduled interviews will be recommended to go directly into background investigations, and we're encouraged with that. And again, I appreciate the work of our department and our human resource department as well for working hard to fill those positions. I'd also like to say thank you to our dispatch center. It came to my attention today that there were some communication issues in other areas of the county, such that dispatch centers went down, and because this is the attitude we have in Riverton, we decided to help out, and our dispatchers are taking the calls, not just for our city, but also for the county, and doing what they can to serve other entities, and I appreciate that as they just step up and they serve. So thank you to our dispatch team for doing that. To stay on the topic of the police department, we'd also like to express public gratitude to the Fremont County Law Enforcement Foundation, or FCLEF. They recently provided funds necessary to purchase AEDs to assist with our officers and have those available in their patrol vehicles. So we appreciate their foundation for supporting our department. The 3 vehicles that were approved at the last meeting have already been delivered. They've been reviewed by our fleet team, and they are now being upfitted with just the final touches before putting them into service. But that award that you made just at your last business meeting is already going to work, and we'll be able to have those 3 vehicles in service in the very near future.
How do they look?
I'll defer to Mr. Eggleston and the chief on that.
Our former fleet manager.
That's right.
They're actually in very decent shape, low mileage. Chief and I were caught by a couple of his staff members looking at the oil and smelling the oil to make sure it wasn't burnt, and threw them for a loop. They apparently didn't know what we were up to out there. But the vehicles are actually in very good shape.
Sniffing oil, that's...
Sniffing oil to make sure it's not burning the transmission or the motor oil.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Oh, good, thank you. I know we had kind of talked about that a little bit. You know, a different organization that we were going through for them, a different system, that sort of thing. But that sounds good, excited for it.
Your Honor, just a few other items. We did receive word from Senator Barrasso's office that we were awarded the Safe Streets for All grant application. That's in the amount of $288,000. A lot of thanks to Brian Eggleston and his team, and also community members. Kathy Klein and others put a lot of work into supporting that application, members of the chamber as well. So we're excited with that announcement, and we can go to work with some corridor planning that should lead to future projects, and maybe more importantly, future grant applications to support those projects. Last meeting, there was a concern brought up about a dark intersection on Pure Gas Road and Webwood, specifically near the Rails to Trails crossing. We reported that there was work going on to field that concern and see if it was possible to put a light in. Mr. Eggleston has successfully coordinated with Rocky Mountain Power and reviewed his available funds, and we are under contract with them to get that light installed in the very near future.
Great.
we're very happy to report that. And I guess because I'm grouping things tonight, I'll also report that the lighting project on Main Street to upgrade the light fixtures to LED is progressing very well, and I believe that's now completed.
Completed.
That is now completed and will be much more energy efficient with those lights that are downtown. And as far as the airport board goes and force meeting, I'll defer to Mr. Eggleston to provide you a brief report on that, if that's okay.
Everybody's passing the buck.
The big news out of the airport board meeting, thank you, Your Honor, is obviously the concern about the half cent. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But, as of the end of October of this year, we had a total of 17,723 persons board the airplane for flights to Denver. That's a record, and our load factors are remaining high through this traditionally slow down period of the year. We're still seeing fairly high load factors, so we're still optimistic about that. The air service is awesome. A few other little discussions here and there, but generally speaking, that was the highlights of the meeting.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Butterfield?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Appreciate that. Well, I will definitely miss Mr. Miller. I hope we can get him here so we can recognize him later. So that's too bad. If you're interested in serving as a community development director, please apply. I had the opportunity to visit with PBS. They're actually wanting to, for the upcoming, what do we have? Not centennial, but the celebration of the United States we have coming up in 2026. They're wanting to do a video basically about the story of Wyoming, which is really cool. I had heard about it at our Rotary meeting, and I went and talked to them a little bit about family history, a little bit about our involvement in Wyoming. It was a good opportunity, and hopefully it turns into something really good. They're doing it right now just with Riverton, because PBS is based here for Wyoming PBS. But they're going to try to have that kind of expanded. Had a good meeting involving WRTA. That's basically the buses you see around, the big blue bus. We were able to talk with a national organization that Tim Nichols, the WRTA director, had reached out to try to get some assistance in terms of, being able to pivot after the half-cent tax was not passed. And it was a good meeting. Mr. Nichols kind of was like Hail Mary, sending them an email, didn't even expect a response back, and they're like, yeah, let's talk. So it was a good opportunity to visit with them. Really enjoyed visiting with our liquor license holders. I think we had about a third, I think we had said, of our packaged liquor dealers who were there at our meeting. Appreciate the ones who showed up for showing up. For those that didn't show up next time. A third is not very much. We'd like to have more, but it was good to have the ones that were there. And also really appreciated the citizens coming together for a parade to celebrate our veterans on the 11th. Wasn't the longest parade I've seen, but it sure was a lot of fun to watch. And so I really appreciate the people that put that together. I think it was a really good opportunity. So, all right, but that's it for me to report. Communication from the floor, citizens' comments. Anyone in the audience that wants to address the city council regarding an item that's scheduled for a public hearing, and you can usually see that on the agenda if it's scheduled for a public hearing. I don't know if we have anything here. You can speak during that public hearing. Usually you could even speak even if it's not scheduled for a public hearing. Just get my attention, and we'll let you speak for a few minutes on something. It's actually really good to be able to have citizen feedback. It's maybe not what other communities do in terms of letting you speak when it's the agenda item and it's discussion for the council, but I think it makes sense. So if you'd like to speak during that time, I'd encourage you to do so. I'd ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes for an individual. If you're with a group, I would ask you to keep your comments to 10. And by that, I mean kind of split it up between the members of your group. I'd ask you to address all comments and questions to me. That's a little bit weird. It's not because I have a big head. It's just because the way that we organize meetings is to address things to the chair of the meeting. I'd ask you to refrain from use of individual names. Keep the comments directed to the issue under consideration, and refrain from making comments of a personal nature that might reflect on the character of another individual, name calling, personal criticism, that kind of thing. So if you'd like to speak now, though, about something that's not on the agenda, please feel free to come up, tell us your name, and I'll have a timer going on my phone, so if you hear something going off, that's probably letting you know it's been 5 minutes. And I've just been notified it's the semi-quincentennial for the United States.
It is.
Thank you for that, Mr. Paranto. Just texted me. You could have just told me.
I didn't want to interrupt you. You're on a roll.
I was on a roll. All right. Well, anyone that would like to speak about something that's not on the agenda, please feel free to come up now and tell us your name and start talking.
Wow, this is fun. My name is Rob Epima. My wife and I own the Adult Rec Center in town. We were at that meeting for the liquor license holders, and we appreciated that. That was great. Thank you for you guys putting that on. So the reason I'm here this evening is one of the things that was discussed was the Sunday hours for the liquor license holders and when we can sell. And it is currently a noon to 10 p.m. The two things as my wife and I were discussing it that came up was Sunday morning, we all know football starts at 11 o'clock in the morning. So you can't get people to come out to the bar at halftime. Once they've started watching a game, and we have the Sunday ticket package. So we have all the games, but we don't have people coming for the first games of the day. And so that was kind of something that we had talked about that was kind of important as far as changing the hours of when we're able to sell on a Sunday. The other thing is that there is, my wife calls it shift work, but there are people that get off at different times during the day, and some people get off in the morning and they'd like to come have a beer when they're done with their day, just like a lot of people like to do at the end of the day, which is the end of their day. And also in the evening as well, there's a lot of people that get off and they don't get off until about 10 o'clock. And so we've actually had customers state that they were sad that they couldn't come in and have a drink after 10 o'clock. So I would ask that that you guys look at this and see if possibly we could just change the Sunday law to be the same as every other day, so it can be a 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. the following day for the liquor sales.
All right. And I know we had a little bit of discussion about this over at our meeting, and the state used to be the source of the time limit, and then they said, no, we want the local community to be the ones in charge of that. So any restriction on that purely comes from the city. So every other day, we're 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., except for Sundays, where we're noon to 10 p.m., right?
Yes, correct.
I think the idea behind that traditionally was we wanted to encourage people to go to church and not go to the bar. Good, bad, or indifferent, I think that was the idea. That was the only thing we could think about at the meeting in terms of why.
Yep.
But I guess we were talking about it between Ms. Harris and I, and we thought it'd make sense to at least bring an ordinance forward, and we can have some discussion and have citizen feedback. And so
we would appreciate that for sure. Absolutely.
I think that'd make a lot of sense. Anybody that's totally opposed to that at all? Okay, we'll have something in the future We can reach out to you specifically too,
Absolutely.
probably the same way we even reached out for the meeting and let you know when it's set on the agenda.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
sounds good. Thanks, Rob.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Chessie Lee, live at 313 North 6th Street East here in Riverton. I want to thank our mayor for his leadership on working on getting a homeless shelter in our community. I admit I was a little disappointed in that this has not had a report that the city put money into, the Riverton Peace Mission put $5,000 into for that report, that it didn't come out sooner. And I would urge that there be more open discussion about it and encouragement. I know that the Riverton Rescue Mission was meeting nearly weekly there for a while and was opening meetings up to the community. And that was an outgrowth of first Richard Lone Bear death from hypothermia a little over a year ago, or 2 years ago, yes. So, and in follow-up to that, I know that there was a local effort to have a coat and blanket drive in the city park. That was quite successful. And then following that, in March of 2023, the Riverton Peace Mission sponsored a summit for our unhoused neighbors, and some of you were there and really appreciated that. And it really showed that there was strong community support, concern about our unhoused neighbors, because we had only planned for 60 people to come, and people were on the planning committee were saying, oh, we'll be lucky if we get 40 people. Well, we ended up getting over 100 people who actually showed up at one time or another. So I know that there's community support for it. Understand that fundraising is difficult, and that when the person came who was leading the study, I was one who was making calls to people to come up for that. And I think part of the downfall there was that people who were making the calls didn't necessarily know who was calling them. And so making those kind of connections with people with deeper pockets. Because I know people I talked to who knew me personally showed up. But I think when people don't know who you are or exactly why you're calling to set something like that up. So just urge to move forward with a positive response, because I think in the last year or so, it's been a lot of negative responses in the community. A local church that ended up turning their outside water spigot off, and under kind of community pressure. That was being used by the homeless population, and that, it seems like they're always being asked to go somewhere else, and having public restrooms, having access to water, things like that, in addition to just shelter, I think is really important to the community, and just encourage that that discussion be opened up and being more inclusive, and also, and I know it's always a challenge to work across culture in terms of involving the tribes, but with new leadership likely to come in because of the election that's happening tomorrow with the Northern Arapaho tribe, I think it's an opportunity for people to come together again and focus on not only getting a shelter, but what are other things that can do to be more welcoming and more inclusive, in working in a positive way instead of just a punitive way, and addressing especially the illness of alcoholism, which is in large part, I think, a result. What has resulted is homelessness because of that, and our inability to address that disease in a way that's really needed to be done. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're good. Thank you, Ms. Lee.
This is a good segue on that.
I thought it was too. If you could
We
tell
did
us
not
who you
plan
are.
that. I did not know she was going to be here, so it's good. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Grace Andrus. And before I speak about this item, I want to say, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to personally thank you and the council and the staff for all of your many hours of work. I know that sometimes you'll do a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't know and they're not aware of. And people usually come to you with very negative things and problems and issues, but I want to say thank you because I understand it's hard work. Okay?
Thank you.
Since Samaritan House closed in 2019, there's been an increase in issues, which you just heard about, that are stemming from those that are desperately in need of shelter and something productive to occupy their time. Many groups have worked toward helping this issue, and we acknowledge and appreciate as community members all that they have done to help fill the gap. However, we as a community need reliable, local, and sustainable solutions. And I'd like to introduce you to Riverton's Mercy House, a brand new nonprofit, faith-based organization that is here to help work on this issue. So you may not know all of us. I'm serving as chair at the moment. Our vice chair is here in the audience, Kimberly Hummel. Our treasurer is also here, Rowena Bland. Our secretary is on vacation right now. Her name is Christine Dunn, and she is a nurse. And there's other board members here in the audience as well. And Ian McFarland is serving as a non-voting board member with us as well. So we are working collaboratively with other nonprofits, which who you do know. Eagles Hope, for example, and some of their board members are here supporting us tonight. And we're also working closely with Wyoming Rescue Mission. As you all are probably aware, they are not able to, have a sister mission here. And I can certainly understand their situation, but they are working very collaboratively with us as we build many things to get our group started. We are registered with the state at this point. Our 501c3 is in process, and once we get that completed and we have that number, we'll certainly give it out. So Riverton's Mercy House has a mission to one day help those struggling with homelessness in our community find a path to rebuild their lives. Our hope is that every individual, no matter their circumstances, will have the opportunity to rejoin society as a thriving, independent member. Our vision for Mercy House is to become a true sanctuary, a place of radical hospitality where people in need will experience compassion and support. By creating this safe space, we aim to empower our community to take a lead in alleviating poverty right here in Riverton, Wyoming. Today, around 89 people in Riverton, men, women, children, native and non-native, are without a stable place to call home. Each one of them has a unique story, but they all share a need for hope, safety, and understanding. This isn't just a number, these are people. It's not their problem, it's our problem, a Riverton problem. And it's one we believe that we can solve together. Extreme temperatures have led to tragic outcomes, as we heard about a few moments ago in the past. And we're committed to making sure that in the future, no one in Riverton will have to fear for their life on a cold night. When Mercy House opens, it will be more than just a shelter. We plan to offer a safe place to rest, clean facilities for showers and laundry, nutritious meals, and most importantly, a compassionate ear, someone who genuinely cares and is ready to listen. With your support, this vision can become a reality. And we're asking for our community to work together to bring hope and healing and a path forward to those who need it. So we are in the process of getting together lists of things that we need that people can donate, and we will be happy to give that out. We have a media person that's working on our website and our Facebook right now, so we're hoping that that will be available soon, but I will stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Sounds great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Anybody in your board that wants to stand up so we can recognize you, or are you all too shy? I know Kimberly's not.
I'm shy. I'm a lot of things shy.
Rowena?
And happy birthday to
Oh, happy birthday. Do we sing? Is that the protocol here?
You can do whatever you like. Whatever makes you happy.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. I owe you a phone call, by the way. I just remembered. Okay.
Your Honor, on that note, I don't know if you guys noticed, but today was pretty chilly, and when students are walking down Sunset with no coats on, it'd be nice if there was something that would be, I mean, I used to stop and give people rides, but my kids got after me, said you can't do that. So, I mean, there's a lot of kids that
Yeah.
are cold and walking, and
Anytime I see that,
would be done with that too.
anytime I see that, I always think that there's probably a mom somewhere that said you should take your coat, it's cold. But that's what we assume because that's what we had.
Depends on if there's a functioning parent.
That's kind of what I was going to say is that for some people, they don't have that mom that says, take your coat, it's going to be cold. So, yeah, it's a good point.
We have a WRTA drive up and down the chain.
Well, and I think like Ms. Andrus was saying, we're not just talking adults either. We have kids, we have a lot of people that are in need, and appreciate your work. Anyone else? Oh, you can come on up if you'd like.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Olson-Roden. I'm with the Riverton Chamber of Commerce. I'm the executive director. Just a couple of things, update you with the chamber since I've been there 5 weeks now. I wanted to thank the mayor and the chief for attending our first responders banquet. Really appreciate that. It was a great event. A couple of other events we've got coming up, and I wanted to pass out some flyers if I can approach here and tell you about them real quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the top one is our after hours networking event that is this Thursday. It's going to be at the Wind River Heritage Center down on South Federal. We welcome everybody to come. We hope you do. We're going to have beverages and snacks and food. The Golden Buffalo, Brown Sugar, Wind River Gallery, they are the co-sponsors. We are now featuring 3 nonprofits, 2 to 3 at each event, and those are at the bottom: Pause for Life, the Riverton Community Thanksgiving, and the Central Wyoming College Foundation. So everybody's welcome to attend. And then our next event is December 6th. It's our Lunch and Learn. We do those once a month on the first Friday up at the Intertribal Center, and we'll have County 10 come and talk to us about reaching customers and who are my customers in a digital type platform. We are also working with Wyoming.com this year to do their second annual event of Christmas on Main, where it's the Saturday before Christmas, and there we'll have Santa at Jerry's, and we're going to work with a couple of the other businesses around there and see what we can do for each of them. They're going to have a sleigh with horses to give the kids rides. They get to see Santa. Should be a good event. So it's only the second year, so we're kind of building each year and see how that will develop. The other thing I wanted to mention is our location, our new location that we've only been at for a few months. I believe it's been really successful, at least through the summer months, with the local food market and the craft, Rocky Mountain Burl, us being in the back there. A lot of tourists are coming to those type places. So we're there with the visitor center to also help answer questions, give additional information. So that has been successful as well. I did have a meeting with Helen Wilson yesterday at the Wind River Visitors Council. She and I are going to start collaborating on a few things for some possible tourism aspects. So I'm really excited about that. So that's all I've got.
Adding these to my calendar, just so you think I'm not texting.
You're texting.
Well, I was with Dean earlier.
Okay.
I have to put it in there 3 times so that I have the 5 minutes before, the 10 minutes before, the 15.
Okay. Any questions?
You just barely, when you were talking about, when you were saying thanks for attending the first responders dinner, you had as one of your, I think it was a lunch and learn, you had Sergeant, wait, was that you guys? Yeah, that
Yes.
was you guys.
Yep.
You had Sergeant Sullivan there and our CSO, Jeff Manning there to talk about safety and that kind of thing in terms of steps you can take as a business owner
Right.
when you have somebody shoplifting or something like that. So
That was a
it's
good event.
Appreciate you putting that on.
Oh, thank you for being there.
Yeah, well, and I think they did very well at it, so. Okay,
All right, thank you.
appreciate you coming in.
This was an afterthought for me. So I'm Rowena Bland, and I am one of the people that are coordinating the Riverton Community Thanksgiving, the second annual one this year. And I don't know if anybody's invited you all, but you all are all invited. You all are all invited. It's free. We're not charging anybody for anything. It's Thanksgiving Day at the fairgrounds from 11:30 to about 2. So come on down. If you are so inclined to do so, please RSVP through the Riverton Senior Center so that we can kind of get a count, have numbers. And the numbers are going up pretty good. So we served about 500 people last year, looking to increase that some this year. So,
Your Honor.
Yes.
Ro, I
Yes.
just wondered, do you need volunteers? Do you have enough? Do you need help?
Alma Law is the guy that's taking care of the volunteers. I'm taking care of the promotional part of it, trying to get invitations out and talking to people about it. So I get phone calls about it every day. I got one today just before our last meeting, and they said, "Is this just for the homeless people?" I said, "No, it's not. It's for everybody, anybody and everybody." So bring your family, bring your friends. I don't know about y'all, but I don't like to cook, so messing up my kitchen is not on my agenda, so I'm all about it. So
It's better to mess up the,
somebody else's kitchen,
yeah.
and they can clean it up. Thank
Thank
you.
you for the reminder.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I saw that there actually, and I was thinking about that with the after-hours networking this Thursday, that it's partnered with the Riverton Community Thanksgiving, so. Oh,
I just got reminded that I didn't mention this part of it, but we are doing meal deliveries too.
okay.
We delivered over 300, right at 300 meals last year. And if you know somebody who needs a meal delivered, we would prefer that they would come and be part of the community meal. But I understand that there are people that can't. We're offering rides as well. So call the Riverton Senior Center. You can get an RSVP for coming to have a meal, getting a meal delivered, or getting a ride down there to and from.
And you don't have to be a senior,
Nope,
a ride.
nope,
You can be a junior.
yep.
Okay. Anything else, Kenesha? All right. Moving on then. Administrative Services Director, Ms. Harris, could you please read the consent agenda items by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Approval of the minutes, November 5th, 2024, regular council meeting. Approval of the minutes, November 19th, 2024, Finance Committee meeting. Approval of the Finance Committee recommendations, November 19th, 2024.
Thank you. Items requiring further discussion.
Your Honor, the Finance Committee met this earlier today at 6:45 prior to the 7 o'clock meeting. And consideration of claims to be paid was $986,187.98. Elon credit in the amount of $7,734.38. Manual checks for $753.19. Payroll and liabilities from the 1st through the 14th in the amount of $415,342.21 for a total of $1,410,017.76. We also had a TAD reimbursement, which for Fremont Air Service for $5,000. And we voted on that, and that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Larson with the motion, Councilwoman Borders with the second. Discussion or amendments?
Your Honor, I'll abstain from any warrants paid to traveling computers.
Okay. Any others? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. Consideration of resolution number 1515, self-serve fuel grant application. We had our last meeting. Councilmember Bailey actually moved, seconded by Councilmember Salisbury, to adopt resolution 1515. But after discussion, Councilmember Bailey moved, seconded by Councilmember Larson, to table resolution 1515 until the next regular council meeting, and the motion passed unanimously. So I guess first off, we'd need a motion to remove resolution 1515 from the table. We have a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Borders. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. We read resolution 1515 by title only last time, but since we're talking about it today, Ms. Harris, could you read resolution 1515 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Resolution number 1515, a resolution of the governing body of the City of Riverton supporting the application of Airport Improvement Program Grant number 3-56-002-4-062-2025 from the Federal Aviation Administration and Grant ARI 028 from the Aeronautics Division of the Wyoming Department of Transportation.
All right, thank you. All right, now that that's off the table, now we had a motion for passage. Would we need another motion, or can we move right into discussion? Okay. Any further discussion? I think we wanted an update from staff on that. Do you have an update for us, Mr. Eggleston?
Your Honor, this application from the FAA allocated $400,000 for this project as part of the Airport Improvement Program. The FAA supports 95% of that, with 2.5 being supported by the city and 2.5 by the state of Wyoming. This project is for a 1,000-gallon avgas tank to be installed with self-service functioning at Central Wyoming Regional Airport. This is an application only. The FAA obviously looks at these projects and allocates the money they feel is essential to get the project across the finish line. In this case, the entire project is valued at $400,000. Should be noted that our engineering staff has to navigate many, many different FAA requirements before anything can be installed on an airfield. It's time-consuming, takes a lot of work on their part, a lot of planning on their part, a lot of working with design people, a lot of environmental concerns they have to deal with. In addition to that, when they propose a fee, anything over $100,000 requires an independent fee estimate be prepared by an unrelated firm. They evaluate the project and then submit a cost of what their estimate would be to perform the same duties. In this case, our independent fee estimate showed that our engineering firm was still $2,000 under what they would recommend for this project. Like I say, it's very complicated, just the mere fact that it has to go through all the federal hoops, be approved to be on the airfield. I'd stand for any questions if you wish, but we also have Wes Werbelow from our Ordura here, our engineering firm. If you would have any questions more specific to the engineering, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them.
Well, and Mike Bailey was the one who started this whole issue, and he's not here. I guess for those who are here or who are watching at our last meeting when we were discussing this, he was a little bit surprised. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit surprised. He was surprised. He's like, are we really talking about $400,000 for $1,000 gas tank? $1,000 AV gas tank. And so that's why we were wanting to get just a little bit more in terms of breaking that down, figuring out why we're looking at so much money. Of course, and we were assuming that FAA, of course, and any government agency, I almost feel like it's trying to discourage you from ever replacing or doing anything like this by having so much red tape to have to go through. But I guess, does anyone have any questions? Are we kind of satisfied with it? Oh, yes. We don't have our gas expert here, but we do have a plane expert here.
Just plain.
It's just plain.
Your Honor, Brian, do we, is 1,000 gallons sufficient? Has any kind of a study been done on that? Because it seems like you can go through 1,000 gallons pretty quickly, and does it really help us buy in bulk quantities? Have we looked at that prospect at all?
Our airport division manager, Mr. Chairman, pulled the numbers on av fuel that was purchased last year. It was about a little over 17,000 gallons total for the entire year. One of the reasons we talked about a larger tank, but the biggest concern is the moisture that accumulates if the fuel sits stagnant for a while and there's a lack of use, that the water has to be drained off the fuel. So the smaller amount of fuel is actually better to manage for us with the low numbers of av users on the field.
Yeah. Your Honor, who's going to be moving, are they going to be moving fuel from the larger tanks to that self-serve tank, or what's that process going to look like?
At this point, myself and staff are discussing the option. However, we're talking about keeping this fuel tank under city control. We'll maintain it, we'll operate it. And I know the FBO up there was asked at one time if they wanted to support an av fuel self-service fuel. They were not interested at that point. We've decided we want to take it on ourselves to offer people who want to fly after 5 o'clock in the afternoon or earlier in the morning, at least the option to be able to buy fuel locally.
Totally agree that should be an option. And I think we'll find that our fuel cells do increase. And part of the issue last year is the FBO was unable to actually pump fuel for a period of time just due to problems with their truck too. So more than once, pilots from Riverton had to fly to Lander or some other communities just to get that fuel. So I was just concerned, and I think Mr. Bailey's concern in my discussion with him was just that the size was kind of small. And is there an option for adding Jet A at some point if we wanted to provide that as a service as well?
Your Honor, Councilman Pronto, we discussed that issue as well. What we found is that many of the Jet A users are either prohibited from filling their own airplanes by their corporations, or they just choose not to do it because the FBO provides that service.
There's an upcoming trend in utilizing more Jet A in general aviation, even with single-engine aircraft like the Diamond Stars and those. They're actually using a smaller, more fuel-efficient diesel engine, which requires Jet A. So having that as an option down the road to at least be able to add that, because as you know, there are some problems with low lead fuel, or with leaded fuel, like the low lead 100, for instance, that airplanes use now is a leaded fuel. And they're looking at making changes to that fuel type. So a lot of the manufacturers are looking at these Jet A burning engines to replace the gasoline engines in a lot of aircraft. So I just wanted to make sure, since this is a big investment, that we're actually looking forward to those potential eventualities.
I'm sure they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think expanding to Jet A, if there's ever a need, would not be a very heavy lift.
Okay.
We could do a separate tank with Jet A in it.
Okay.
It's just right now, the
cost.
market's not supporting it right now.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
400,000 again.
Yeah, 400,000. That's a lot of money for a 1,000-gallon tank.
4,000 a gallon.
Wow. It'd be more than that.
400? I don't know. 400,000. Yeah, it'd be $400 a gallon.
Yeah. Roughly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other discussion. Appreciate it, Councilman Pronto. I knew we could count on you to have some intelligent discussion on that.
Or just discussion.
Anything else? Okay. And I do appreciate the information regarding the independent fee estimate conducted on this to be able to let us know that that's what we're expecting.
Right.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Yes.
with the engineer here, would you like to give him a chance to speak about any of it, or
Want to say anything?
like we came prepared?
You were nodding, so I figured we were good.
I was sitting in the back, so I wouldn't have to, but no, thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I think Mr. Eggleston covered it very well. I think that if we were just going out and procuring a 1,000-gallon tank, it'd be a different story and the cost would be different. But having it come from the FAA does come with all the federal strings attached to it, and that includes we have to put together a DBE plan, disadvantage business enterprise plan, and put that in action on this project. We have to do an environmental CADEX, all the grant administration. So there is a big lift that unfortunately comes with that. But if I can shed maybe a little bit of positive onto this, is typically with the FAA, revenue generating items such as fuel tanks are not federally eligible, but this is coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law money, and that it carries all the same requirements, but they are a little bit more lax on that side of things, because otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation of being able to use a federal grant to put this in. And so I think that is a huge positive, although it does come with the higher price tag with it being federal. And to Councilman Pronto's point, right now the industry is not conducive to self-serve Jet A, but that could change at any point in the future. And protecting for adding or changing fuel sources with the infrastructure we're putting in is not a problem at all. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions and appreciate the chance to speak. But
Thank you. Appreciate you being here, and I agree. We did want to make sure you were ready to roll.
yeah, I was here, so happy to speak, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Your Honor, I will add that this discussion is something we've talked about on the airport board for 15-ish years. So seeing it come to some level of fruition is really a positive. A lot of aircraft will overfly Riverton just because we don't have that option. So providing that as an option really helps increase traffic and landings at our airport, which increases revenues from the federal government. So it is a positive.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Unless we want to hear from Mr. Ransom? No, I was just trying to make you look and be concerned. That was all. I got the reaction.
It worked.
All right, all in favor of passage of Resolution 1515, say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We'll get you up here next time, Bruce. All right. We want to move in, we're an hour in, we can still keep going. I was saying it might not be a bad time to take a quick break, but we'll move on to the EDGE optional half-cent excise tax funding agreement, Riverton Medical District. Mr. Butterfield's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. At your last business meeting, you did award $325,000 to the Riverton Medical District from the optional excise tax to support economic development. Pursuant to the standard process that has been in place with the City of Riverton since this tax was initiated, we do have a funding agreement that will go alongside with the award that you have made. That funding agreement is in your packet, but to hit some of the primary items, the agreement does note that the funds have to be used pursuant to the ballot language, which means it has to be used in a manner that will increase or retain jobs and or result in a net gain of money into the community. It also states that any funds that are awarded as part of the agreement would be subject to recovery by the city if the recipient or Riverton Medical District failed to meet the standards and requirements set forth by the agreement, which basically means the requirements of the tax and then also with the purpose set forth during the award. It also states that the funds should be expeditiously spent, and also it requires a report from the Riverton Medical District detailing the use of the awarded funds within 18 months of receipt of funds. Specifically, the funds will be used to support the construction of their facility and, as requested at the last business meeting, to help cover the cost of inflation from the original construction estimate. This is a very similar agreement to the previous two agreements that are in place with Riverton Medical District, and staff recommends that City Council execute this funding agreement with the Riverton Medical District.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agreement for use of economic development tax funds between the City of Riverton and the Riverton Medical District.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Cox. Discussion? Any additions or changes or anything? I know this was specifically for the steel package is what we were looking at, if that's correct. You don't need to get up. You can stay down there, Court. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. Next up, Ordinance 24007, second reading, street parking regulations. Mr. Butterfield.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Council discussed this matter at length at its last meeting and also recommended some amendments. To provide a little bit of background, this ordinance has come forward from the Planning Commission and specifically from a committee to address parking that was made up of members of the Planning Commission. The changes that are proposed are meant to improve parking throughout the city of Riverton and come after really several years of coordination on the Planning Commission's part. While the ordinance was passed on first reading on November 5th, there were several proposed changes and items of clarification that were brought forward by the council. I will briefly address those, but also take a higher level review of this ordinance change. Of note, the key difference between the existing code and the proposed ordinance include the incorporation of a seasonal closure and also broader citywide application of parking restrictions. There's also more clarified definitions of recreational vehicles or RVs and trailers as well. Currently, Section 1016.110 of the Riverton Municipal Code establishes parking restrictions for large vehicles, and it prohibits those that are 20 feet or longer from parking on streets that are narrower than 45 feet. So if you have a narrow street, currently you cannot park a vehicle that is 20 feet or longer. That's the current ordinance. That's from sundown to sunup, so overnight. That's an important clarification. So on those narrow streets, currently you cannot park a vehicle that's 20 feet or longer overnight. The current ordinance also restricts vehicles that weigh 10,000 pounds or greater, except for recreational vehicles, from parking in residential zones overnight. That's R1 through R4. And this is also applying to trailers or cargo trailers that are 20 feet or greater. The proposed ordinance changes some of these conditions. First, it changes the title of 1016.110. The existing title states vehicles 20 feet long or more not to park on certain streets at night. The new ordinance would be vehicle parking restrictions on city streets. So you can see already it's more encompassing than the existing ordinance. As I already mentioned, the new ordinance introduces broader restrictions, applying parking restrictions to all city streets, not just the residential areas that I had mentioned before. It raises the minimum vehicle length to 22.5 feet from the 20 feet that was previously referenced. And the reason for that is it's hard to buy a 3/4 ton Dodge pickup extended cab that is under 20 feet. We went through a few of the industry specifications, and it's 22.5 now. I know 2.5 feet really isn't that much, but it is when you're talking about the law. Additionally, the new ordinance does introduce this seasonal closure period, and that runs from October 1st through May 15th. The ordinance expands restrictions for vehicles over 10,000 pounds to be included in that seasonal closure period, meaning if you have a vehicle that's 10,000 pounds or greater, you cannot park it on city streets during that seasonal closure. It also states that you cannot do it year-round overnight on any street, not just the residential streets. The new ordinance prohibits the parking of trailers 20 feet or longer and RVs or recreational vehicles on all city streets during the seasonal closure. So from the period of October 1st to May 15th, this proposed ordinance does not allow an individual to have a trailer 20 feet or greater to be parked along the street or an RV to be parked on the street. And this would be in industrial areas, residential areas, and commercial areas. A lot of discussion occurred at the last business meeting regarding a provision of the proposed ordinance relating to adjacent property owners granting permission to individuals to park in front of their home or property on the public street. Upon review of the city's legal counsel, it was recommended that this be struck entirely from the proposed ordinance. The reason for that is that paragraph provided somewhat of a property right to these adjacent property owners, granting them the permissive power to park in a public space, but also de facto, I got nervous, that was mine.
I did too.
But de facto, the ability to restrict. So not just permissive, but also denial powers. That goes against the very nature of having public spaces and would not stand up legally as far as granting that right or property interest to the adjacent property owner. And again, that would extend not just to residential properties, but Main Street properties, commercial properties, industrial properties. If that paragraph would have remained in the proposed ordinance, any business on Main Street could grant or deny permission to anybody parking along Main Street. Therefore, staff did not include this provision in the ordinance for second reading. The city's legal counsel also struck the reference to the 72-hour restriction that was included in first reading. There was some discussion by the council on this provision 2 weeks ago. It's staff's opinion and also legal counsel's opinion that the 72-hour restriction is sufficiently covered in existing ordinance, and that's Riverton Municipal Code 1212-050.
Well, it creates confusion if you've got it repeating. Got it.
That's correct. So to avoid conflict and confusion, we do not propose that you include this during your second reading. The proposed ordinance is included in your packet. I've color-coded this proposed ordinance. Those items that are being struck from the existing ordinance are in red, and they're struck through. New language is underlined and in blue, and language that was changed for third reading is underlined and in purple, and that is either struck out or not struck out. Your Honor, I believe that covers what you're considering this evening on second reading as it relates to these parking changes, and I would stand for any questions should you have them.
Okay. Councilman
What,
Larson?
you said 35 feet. What number are the width restrictions? What number of roads are those? We have any type of notification of what roads those are specifically?
Your Honor,
Mr. Butterfield?
council member, unfortunately, I do not have a count on our current roads that are 45 in width, 45 feet in width or less. We could look into that and return to you. I do remember that this was changed by the council probably 6 years ago as it was considering some parking. But we can inventory that and let you know currently under the ordinance which streets are affected by that 45-foot width or less.
And I think that's a good question. I mean, I almost feel like it's creating an expectation that we're going to have our citizens go out there with the measuring tape to figure out how wide the street is.
No, that wasn't my question. My question was, after we identify which roads those are we going to put signage up to notify that this road cannot have double parking or parking after the season starts for snow removal? And so that's plainly visible to somebody that just moves in.
Well, that's what I'm saying too, Mr. Larson, is that if we were to pass this without having that signage, we're assuming that people are going to be able to estimate 35 feet or 45, less than.
Yeah.
Your
So-
Honor, I think it's an important point of clarification, council member, that the existing ordinance, the current language addresses the 45-foot width. The new ordinance does not. It is encompassing upon all
Oh, I see.
streets.
That's right.
And so if you adopt this, it would be on any width of street. The current ordinance is the one that's restricted by width.
Any ordinance, so it would be restrictive of 50 feet also then?
Right. Any street.
Cool.
Your Honor, it may be a point of order. I think you probably need a motion before discussion continues.
It's a fair point. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 24007 on second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Larson with the motion, Councilwoman Borders with the second. Okay, now we're in discussion.
Your Honor.
Councilwoman
Last-
Salisbury.
Last time when we were talking, Councilwoman Cox brought up the comment about why are we only doing it 8 months out of the year instead of 12? Because we don't do snow plowing on all the streets now.
Right.
So if that's a reason, I feel like the concern she brought up the last meeting would make more sense to just have it year round.
Oh, yeah, not have any concern about the seasonal closure. I know.
I do believe there's more cars and campers and boats parked during the off-season than during the open or the off-season.
On season?
On season.
Yeah, but, I mean,
During the
during
Does that make
May
sense to have
to
seasonal
May to
closure?
October, I think there's more traffic, more cars parked during the summer.
And if the reason is for snow removal, we don't do snow removal on all the streets.
No, and I remember Mr. Miller was very clear on that it wasn't just snow removal, it was the buildup of snow that's created there, the issues that you might have with visibility, that sort of thing was some of what was concerned.
There's visibility issues if you have a camper parked on your street.
Right, the only difference is you don't have snow usually in June, although sometimes you do.
But the kids are out of school running around.
True, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely a different, and if they're running around and there's a camper trailer there or something like
Hard
that.
to see them.
So I guess just to break this down, no motor vehicle that's not a trailer or a recreational vehicle, right? So we're talking that the length is more than 22 and a half inches.
Feet.
And 22 feet, 6 inches. It's just a day. Shall be parked on any of the streets in the city. So number one, the B is saying if you have a vehicle that is not a trailer or a recreational vehicle that's more than 22 feet, 6 inches, you cannot be parked on any of the city streets in Wyoming or in Riverton, except for loading and unloading of goods. So now that would restrict semis parking anywhere on the street in Riverton except for loading or unloading of goods, because that's not a trailer, it's not a recreational vehicle. Except for some drivers, maybe it is a recreational vehicle, I don't know.
And so where are people supposed to park that do not have?
Well, that's kind of where I was wondering is, not that I think there's a lot of semi-drivers that are wanting to park along the city streets, but I know one that sometimes does. Not that I'm saying it's right or wrong, but you might have to ticket my dad. All right, so that'd be the first thing. And then the next, no vehicle with a gross weight of 10,000 pounds or more shall be parked on any of the streets in the city during the seasonal closure or from dusk to daylight any day of the year. And this is where you're kind of saying maybe just remove the seasonal closure bit there. And just, what would we say, dusk to daylight or anytime? Are you saying just don't be parked on any of the streets? What's your proposal there?
Well, I mean, I understand that people bring their stuff home for the weekend and need to unload it and, pack and stuff. So it's not like you can never park in front of your house with your personal belongings. But, I mean, it's the prolonged parking that I think is the issue.
So you're saying maybe remove the seasonal closure and just say from dusk to daylight any day of the year?
Your Honor, can you ask the city administrator kind of what you feel the pros and cons are of this?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Can you give us the pros and cons as you see this, whether we pass it or not, the issues that may arise, or share your thoughts on it?
Thank you, Your Honor. I will try, and as I am standing in for Mr. Miller, who did the majority of this work, I'll be as thorough as possible. And also I'll try to represent the sentiment of the parking committee. But before doing so, I think the question that you need to answer as a city council is the one that was posed to me by our attorney, and that is, what problem are you trying to cure with this ordinance? When I asked that question of Mr. Miller, and as he represented the thoughts of the Planning Commission and the Parking Committee, a lot of it was congestion upon the streets. Some of it was related to complaints that they had received from folks in residential areas where their neighbor may have 5+ vehicles or more that are parking in front of their neighbor's property versus just their own. So that was one of the issues they were trying to remedy or cure. Other was safety related. I think that is why they're proposing the seasonal closure. I think it's a true statement that the seasonal closure can't specifically be applied to snow removal because our snow and ice control plan does not address every street. We don't have the resources to do that. Mr. Miller and the Parking Committee did, however, state that by removing some of the congestion on the streets in the winter, they felt that it created a safer environment. In my opinion, what's happening with this is you're really restricting anyone with a trailer from parking on streets in the city of Riverton. And that would be a trailer larger than 20 feet. This ordinance changes things to state that you can't do it anywhere. Whereas the existing ordinance addresses more the residential zones. I believe the thought process on the current ordinance is in residential areas where you have more children playing, more families, more vehicles, you want to restrict large trailers from being parked there overnight, and also those heavy vehicles from being parked there overnight. Having heavy vehicles moving in and out and parking on residential streets could be problematic to how the streets are designed. They're only designed to take a certain weight load versus industrial and commercial areas. I don't think this ordinance is really addressing that problem, but it is something to consider as far as where you're putting your heavy traffic. And please forgive me as I'm gathering my thoughts in response to your question. I think the pro, as it relates to this ordinance as proposed, is you reduce the congestion on the streets as it relates to parking. The negative is, as I mentioned before, you're restricting folks that have a trailer from parking on any streets, and you're restricting folks from parking when they have a recreational vehicle or an RV on our streets. And it's very broad in scope as it is proposed, whereas right now it's very specific in scope to just being overnight or in residential areas. I apologize if I'm meandering, but I hope I've sufficiently answered your question. One item I would bring up that our legal counsel brought forward was if the council thought that the seasonal closure had value, you may also want to consider honing down its application and tying it to our snow and ice control plan. Meaning if it's related to safety and operations with the streets, we should tie it specifically to the streets that are affected by the snow and ice control plan. If someone was ticketed underneath this ordinance and it was brought towards the judge, I think the judge would need to consider a few points when it comes to the seasonal closure. And that would be, what's the difference between allowing a vehicle that's less than 22.5 feet on a street versus a vehicle that's 25 feet? What harm was created by that difference in length? And the same would be during the seasonal closure, what would be the harm difference between a trailer less than 20 feet versus a trailer that's 25 feet when you are trying to resolve or cure the problem that's being proposed? I hope that makes sense, but if you see that our attorney wants to ensure that we're not being arbitrary or capricious and that it's defensible if someone contested a ticket that they would receive under this ordinance if passed.
Did we have anyone in the audience that was wanting to speak on this? Oh, great. Why don't you come on up?
Casey Kyler, I'm super loud apparently. I'm in Ward 1. I'm over here on 1013 Pinecrest. I kind of broke this down, Your Honor, Mr. Butterfield. Are we looking at Ordinance 18, TAC 011? Is that the current?
The one we're looking at that's proposed is the new 1016-110.
Yeah, okay, Your Honor. So under the 1016-110, I wrote some notes down after I printed this. So my pickup, like Mr. Butterfield was talking about the new 22.5 versus 20, my pickup is 22 foot long. I park in my driveway, that thing's hanging in the sidewalk. If I put the good old shin and knee killer receiver on there, it's almost in the street. But the difference between my pickup and a model that's just the extended cab with short bed, that's 19 1/4. It's not a whole lot different, really. I mean, what is that, 2 3/4 foot? Who knows? So my deal with my pickup is it's in the sidewalk. That's a safety issue as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm this far away from my garage. If there's a little kid riding down the sidewalk, I'm like, it's not good. So I would rather personally park in the street for that safety reason. Being on the street in winter? No, not with the dually. Not my idea of, getting plowed into. Now this, oh, by the way, the 45 foot, my street is 32. I measured it. I absolutely measured it.
I was just curious if people had.
I did tonight right before I came. I thought it was
I'm
kinda
glad you
funny,
did that.
So under the definitions, subsection A there, it looks at the gross weight with combination. That's, includes the trailer with the vehicle. You've got a 17 foot long pickup with a 2-place sled trailer on. I mean, you're looking at probably 30 foot, Your Honor, probably around there. So combination, people with trailers, like Councilman Cox was saying, kind of a big issue. Off season or not, it doesn't really matter. The one thing, though, is it leaves a lot of these cars out of the equation if it's the 20-foot rule or 22.5-foot rule. I got a Volkswagen. Thing's like 16 foot long. Doesn't matter. Still a safety issue if someone's pulling out. They got a lower vehicle. I don't think it matters. And my point on that is there's a lot here that is up for interpretation. And I'm glad there's a legal team that looks at it. But there's some wording in here. The one that really struck me was subsection C, except a recreational vehicle with a GVR of 10,000 should not be parked in any of the streets, R1 through R4. So that to me says right there, except recreational vehicle, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong with the new what's proposed. I could park my Class A motorhome there. Recreational vehicle. It's over 10,000. I guarantee it. So the wording in there, this is where it leaves up to interpretation, I think, and someone's going to come along, a peace officer or code enforcement, they're going to be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then with the proposed changes, I think it needs to be a little bit more transparent to the wording. A lot of this stuff is, it's almost outdated, really. I mean, to have to explain what a vehicle is, or, house trailer, cargo trailer. I see Fred Flintstone wouldn't be there because it says moved by human power. It's just some of the wording. I think it's just too lengthy. A lot. And I understand, from an attorney's point of view, I think it needs to be more transparent, especially to the community.
Well, and I think it gets a little confusing because we're talking about so many different factors, right? We're talking about the weight, we're talking about the length, we're talking about whether it's a recreational vehicle, we're talking about, I mean, there's just so many different factors that are coming into play. And then the seasonal, of course. And then we have dusk till dawn. Just so many different things that it gets confusing. And I think that's that's where the question that was posed to Mr. Butterfield comes in. What are we really wanting? You know, and it's almost like, it almost would make sense just to say all of these, get rid of the seasonal closure and just say dusk till dawn. Don't be having them parked on the street, greater than 10,000 pounds, recreational vehicle, that sort of thing.
And Your Honor, I don't know if dusk to dawn has any more, weight than all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about safety issues with kids aren't out at 2 a.m, hopefully. That's a big deal. And a lot of these trailers are less than 20 feet, 2-place sled trailers, jet ski trailers. You took your jet ski off the trailers, just hanging out in the street.
Mm-hmm.
The measurements on them are almost negate, in my opinion. I mean, everybody wants to be a good neighbor, but let's be real.
Yeah.
And I think this needs to be a lot more transparent. Just boom, maybe all day, all night. Length limit or minimum, I don't know if it's really. I hope that this will really get reviewed and take some of the, I wouldn't say fluff, but be more transparent so the community members, such as myself, everybody else can understand it better, give some good, hard set rules. We can't do it. With safety in mind, of course, for the kids.
Gotcha.
And I will entertain questions if anybody has any.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor.
I had one more hand, I think. You wanted to speak about this? Come on up. You're the next contestant.
Good evening, Council. In regards to the parking thing, I think when we talk in more broader terms, as he was saying, I think I would agree with you and Mr. Larson from the previous meeting. The primary goal is the safety on the city streets, and the safe passage of vehicles, more specifically to the community areas in the wintertime that aren't slated for snow removal or ice removal, like 16th, Moose, Antelope, all of those streets. It gets really rutted in there, and it's really impassable to have two vehicles going down the same side when you have campers. And I think if the language just was maybe a little bit clearer or just more defined as travel trailers, campers, recreational vehicles meant, for off-season. And maybe that's where you could include the off-season of it, and ban them altogether off city streets at any time. It's the responsibility of the city for safe passage and safety of the citizens, not where somebody can park. If you're going to own those type of vehicles, you should have appropriate parking for them.
Okay.
That's what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilwoman Cox.
I'm just wondering if there's a way we can reword this. I think the issue that we're all kind of coming across is you can't permanently park those types of vehicles. You can have them there occasionally, but you can't permanently park your RV, your trailer in front of your house.
Or your neighbor's house, for that
Or your
matter.
neighbor's, yes, on a residential street. I think that's the issue that we're all, yes, people bring them back and forth, but it's the ones that sit there year-round, I think, is the issue that we're having, because they don't ever move them for snow removal, and they're basically just stationary there. Those are the ones that are causing the problems. That's causing the congestion on the streets, that's their permanent parking spot.
And I think that's where the dusk till dawn comes in a little bit too, is because that makes it easier to enforce. You're saying, okay, fine, you can have it there temporarily, but if you're leaving it there overnight, clearly the intention is for it to be permanent.
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying. You're saying that's what we're wanting. That's the evil, I guess, that we're trying to solve, is this permanency of RVs, trailers, maybe of any length for that matter, being parked on city streets. It's like, if you're going to own that, you have to figure out something besides in the right of way, because that's what we're talking about. And that was the discussion with the adjacent to property owners. Like, that's actually the city right of way. It's a public right of way, not like your private parking spot. And I think that's where we get a little bit sideways with things, is this idea that I have a right as a private owner of property to park in the public right of way and leave it there until the end of time.
And if it is a snow removal issue, if it's extra cars, like right now I have extra cars because I have 2 teenage drivers, and so, but if we're removing snow during the day, then their cars are at the school, and so that clears the road for the snow removal then. So I think if those vehicles are moving at any point in the day, and if we can send out the new alerts and say, hey, we're going to be cleaning these streets on these days, that gives the people a chance to take their car to work or pull it in the garage if it's an extra. And I think it's the larger permanent vehicles that are the issue.
So I'm wondering if it would make sense, and I'm just throwing this out there, of saying no motor vehicle with an overall length, not trailer or recreate, with an overall length of 22.5 inches, 22 feet, and 6 inches. Man, it's just been a day. So the longer motor vehicles, the heavier motor vehicles, and maybe even just any trailer at all not being parked in the city right-of-way from dusk till dawn. I mean, that'd be a way to simplify it. That'd make it easier to be able to understand it. We're making it so you can still move stuff and have it there temporarily. I mean, you're loading the kids up because you're going to go to the lake and you've got your boat and everything in your trailer and all of that. I mean, you can be parked there, but just not having it, that idea of permanence. I don't know. That'd be a thought.
What about a horse trailer overnight?
Good question.
I mean, I think we're going to cause ourselves more problems with this ordinance than we're solving the way it's just so, I mean, it meets concise. This is what it is.
Right. Well, that's why I'm saying just having it be dusk till dawn, get rid of the seasonal restriction and just have it be bigger vehicles, heavier vehicles, trailers,
So if you leave
not
the
overnight.
horses at the fairground and you park your trailer overnight, the dusk to dawn wouldn't work.
Your Honor, there are not many horse properties in the city of Riverton. I can only think of Sunset and across from U.S. Energy that would apply. So for a horse trailer to be on 16th East or on Aspen or any Marianne or any of the other streets where there are no horses allowed,
Well, no, I'm not
that's
talking-
kind of fictitious.
My brother comes in all the time and leaves his horse trailer across from Sunset Park on this thing.
So you're part of the problem.
I mean, at times.
Yeah,
because
you're
I'm
the-
like, so there's times that does, and there's students that use the arena at the college that live in some of these areas that they take their horses and then they park their trailers. So that-
Won't be able to anymore. They'll have to find new lodging.
Well, and I think that's the whole question too. I mean, is this even something to pass, right? Or do we kind of say, hey, go back to the drawing board and let's figure out something that makes sense? I mean, we can sit there and try to polish it along as much as we want, or we can just say, we can't, we even up here who do this on a regular basis, pass ordinances, are having a hard time really figuring out what we're talking about. And we read these more regular than the normal person. Not that anyone's normal. Mr. Butterfield, did you have something to add, or?
Yes, Your Honor, if I could. In response to maybe the problem to remedy or cure being vehicles that stay on the streets for a prolonged period of time, I'll read what you have currently in ordinance at 12-12050, just so you can see what we have on the books now, and that may address some of the concerns that are being discussed. Currently, that ordinance states, it is unlawful for any person within the city to place, park, or deposit any object, vehicle, or item upon any street, highway, or thoroughfare within the jurisdiction of the city for a period of more than 72 hours. And there's a few more items that are associated with that ordinance, but currently, you cannot leave a vehicle in the same spot for 72 hours or greater. Or if I was replacing the dishwasher in my house and I just left my dishwasher, the old one, on the curb for 3 weeks, that's against our current ordinance. It can only be there for a maximum of 72 hours. So if that's the problem you're trying to cure, I think you have an ordinance already that does that. As you're looking at the current proposed ordinance, it seems that to me the breadth of application is something that should be considered. The current application really restricts itself to residential zones and overnight. And obviously there's length and width restrictions as well, but that's primarily where the current restrictions are applied. As I listened to a lot of your discussion, the examples that are being brought forward primarily apply to residential areas. The newly proposed ordinance would have a broad application. And so I bring to your attention maybe Railroad Avenue or Monroe, East Monroe, where there's industrial uses, and you do quite frequently see trailers longer than 20 feet parked along those streets. And by passing the proposed ordinance, it would restrict that entirely. That may or may not be something that you prioritize as a council, but I think as you consider parking, you may want to apply it to land use and zoning, so that if you have preferences for how streets and street parking is done in residential areas versus how it's done in commercial or industrial areas, you should really spell it out in the ordinance that you're considering.
Your Honor, is the issue now that we're not enforcing the existing ordinances? And does making a new ordinance actually solve a problem that we're not already able to solve with an existing ordinance?
It's always a good question, right? I mean, is there really anything that we're trying to solve here?
I mean, it's almost like we're adding redundancy. I mean, we're clarifying to some degree, but we already have an ordinance, you know, and I guess my other question pertaining to this particular change is what effect, and I tried looking earlier for 1212-050 and I didn't find it. So maybe Mr. Butterfield can clarify for me, but that 72-hour ordinance piece, I mean, literally somebody could park in front of your house. I could park my whatever in front of your house, go out there, move it 6 inches, 72 hours, 71 and a half hours later, move it another 6 inches and be within the guideline. So we have to use a little bit of common sense there, like, yeah, that's not really what we need.
Right.
So I don't know if there's enough clarity in the existing ordinance to deal with that problem that we're trying to adjust, and maybe creating another ordinance is just gumming up the works.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing too, is if we want to be adjusting that, then it would almost make sense to adjust 1212-050. I mean, rather than working in here. I do think that there is I think it makes sense to make the change because if we don't make some change, then right now vehicles longer than 20 feet can't be parked within the city, if I'm not mistaken, the way that we have it currently. That was part of what was being changed here, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Butterfield.
Your Honor, that's correct, but it is only on streets that are at a width of less than 45 feet. And it should be noted that, and we haven't talked about this too much, but it's also a vehicle that it's a width of 8 feet. So currently it's 20 feet or more, and then a width of 8 feet. That's where the restriction is. And it's only on the narrow streets, but the new one would be any street, 22 and a half feet, 8 feet wide.
All right. Well, I feel like we've been beating a dead horse with this. I mean, I think we've gotten kind of a lot of discussion out, but I guess I'm wanting to know if we want to amend or if we want to say no or if we want to pass it how it is. Shall we?
Your Honor,
Yes.
and I'm sorry to interject so many times on this discussion. I think it'd be valuable to read the ordinance by title only before you call for a vote.
Didn't we already do that?
I don't remember if we read it by title or if we just made the motion.
I don't think we read.
What about you, Ms. Harris? Do you think you read it by title?
We need a replay.
I think we probably should read it by title only, just to be sure.
Sounds good, other than pulling out a recording. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 24-007 on second reading, an ordinance amending Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, to revise Chapter 10.16.110, Vehicles 20 feet long or more, not to park on certain streets at night, of the City of Riverton Municipal Code, and repealing all ordinance or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, and providing for an effective date.
All right, thank you. All right, so we already had a motion to pass this on second reading by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Borders. Do we have any motions, amendments, any other discussion?
Inquiry.
Inquiry.
If we allow this motion to fail, can we bring it, how do we go about bringing it back up differently?
We table it.
No?
Well, if it failed, it still could be brought up if it were something that were not the same ordinance. Like if we said, hey, let's look at 12.050 and say, hey, this whole idea of moving it 6 inches is not okay. I mean, we could still do that.
But in terms of this ordinance, if we pass it, then we go to another reading and we can amend it. If it fails tonight, it doesn't move to third reading.
Correct.
How then can you bring it back up in a different way to modify it, potentially?
We could just bring it up at a later time with a different, I mean, whatever it is, as long as it's not this identical ordinance, I think we're good. Mr. Butterfield, unless you have.
Your Honor, I would agree with that. You can't bring forward an exactly similar ordinance. Another thing to consider is a new council could bring forward an exactly similar ordinance. So this sitting council could not hear this exact ordinance again. A new sitting council could. But if you bring forward a new ordinance that is different, it's fine to bring it forward.
Your Honor, I have a question. Why couldn't we just amend the existing ordinance? Could we tweak that instead of reinventing the wheel with a whole new ordinance?
We can. I mean, right now, the title and everything for this is for 10.16.110, which we also have and it's amending it. But if we were to come back and say, let's look at 12.12.050, we can do that. There's no reason we can't. And we could, now what would that look like? I mean, because I do agree. I think that there's people that play games, you know, move it 6 inches and move it 6 inches. I mean, that's why I was proposing the idea of dusk till dawn, right? Because then you're getting rid of that moving it 6 inches idea. That offends the horse trailer part of things, which I understand and get, and I can get behind Councilwoman Salisbury, but I'm just, you know, so.
But Your Honor, if the intent is to try to eliminate some of the long-term storage on city streets, that can be addressed with 12.12.050.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the intent.
Well, yeah, like an abandoned vehicle, you're not going to be able to move that 6 inches very
All right,
easily.
we have another ordinance for that too. Or, you know, the people that are servicing their vehicles out in the street and it's unmovable for 2 weeks. That addresses that as well.
Mhm.
So are we really just saying, are we really trying to make this a citywide ordinance that's effectual down on Monroe just as it is on 16th Street, just as it is on Marianne? I mean, they're kind of different uses in different parts of town. So going by zone makes some sense too.
Right. All right, well, are we ready to vote?
Beat this to death.
Good? Okay, all in favor of passage of ordinance 24.007 as it has been presented, which is some changes from first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We know who that was.
Yes, we do.
Any opposed, say nay.
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 I vote nay. Motion fails. We'll come back with some more ideas. I really appreciate, I mean, our our group that was looking at ways to improve parking, but I just don't know if this improves the
To
issue.
me, Your Honor, there's just too much ambiguity and kind of left out there. And, you know, I went and I was looking at some of the other ordinances, and I just couldn't really resolve what it is we're trying to fix with this particular ordinance.
Yeah. I hear you. All right. Well, we are now at 8:50. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back for our bid award on the transport van. A couple of other items tonight. Hopefully, they'll go by faster. So we'll be in recess at 8:50. Return at 9.
$150,000 to purchase a new prisoner transport van. Now, this van will replace a van that's currently got just shy of 400,000 miles on it. It was a good van, but it's starting to fall apart. We went out to bid for this vehicle in November 2nd, 2024. Bids were publicly opened on the 12th of November, 2024. I received 2 bids for the project. First bid from Fremont Chevrolet Buick and GMC for a total project cost of $86,986. Second bid was from Fremont Motor Company, the Ford dealership. Their bid was at $90,527. Part of this is, it's the purchase of a cargo van, but it's also purchasing the insert for the prisoner transport portion of it. As I said, we had $150,000 budgeted for the project, and it came in $63,014 under budget. Our recommendation would be to award the low responsive bidder to Fremont Chevrolet Buick and GMC for $86,986.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve the purchase of the 2025 Chevrolet 3500 cargo prisoner transport van in the amount of $86,986 to Fremont Chevy in Riverton.
So moved.
Second.
Your Honor, quick question.
Motion by Councilman Larson. Hold on just a second. Second by Councilwoman Borders. Go ahead. I just wanted to write it down.
I was curious, Mr. Eggleston, what manufactures the current van?
It's a Sprinter van. It was actually when Mercedes owned the company. It actually has a Mercedes diesel engine in it.
I was just curious.
It's gone for 400,000 miles?
Just shy of 400,000.
Oh. It's like, well, if it's a Chevy or Ford, then you probably want to buy another one.
I was going to say, whatever we got, I'd like to get it again.
Exactly. That's what I was asking.
Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I had a call today from a concerned citizen, and he wanted to know why we couldn't use one of our police vehicles to do this. And I asked that same question and was told that the inside of this van is specifically for transporting people in a confined manner, that so they are not able to hurt one another or themselves. So a police vehicle wouldn't do that.
It's true. I mean, if you're going to be transporting someone in a vehicle, I mean, heck, we have people sometimes when we're transporting them with kicked out the windows. They've done all sorts of things to damage the vehicle and to damage each other.
That's correct, Your Honor. And the fact of the matter is many times they're transporting 10 to 12 people back from the jail, and they'd have to send multiple patrol units over to bring these inmates back for court.
So when we have court on Wednesday afternoons, we're going to be bringing back multiple people, more than you could fit in a typical police vehicle, which would be 3 in the back. And that's cozy. You'd have to like the person you're sitting next to, which most of them don't. Yeah. So that's a good question, Councilman Larson. I think you're spot on. I mean,
well, the citizen was more interested in the money that was being spent, the 150,000 or thereabouts. And I assured him I would bring it up because I knew there was a specific reason that we're transporting back and forth because of the court situation here. But when you're transporting people that are in a timeout zone, you want to make sure that they get to where they're going safely and the driver is also safe.
good point. Yeah. More separation is probably better when you're transporting folks who might be upset at their situation, understandably. So So Chief, does this mean we're getting another new vehicle? I know we had talked about that.
Your Honor, that'd be up to council, but just my rough estimates with the savings from the first or the go around of Tahoes, and plus with the bid coming in way under, we would have about 94,000.
I was going to say it'd be somewhere around 90 or 80.
Yeah. And be, council can direct staff to look into it.
Mr. Butterfield, what do you think? I know we had kind of discussed that, and part of the idea even was we were saying we're saving on this now. Maybe if we could save some more on the transport van, we could get another new vehicle. I know that the 87,000 that we're talking about here isn't everything, because we've got to do the decals, all of that. I mean, whatever we need to do, or the wrap, I guess I should say.
Your Honor, that's definitely something that you could explore. You could also explore other needs that are around the city. You had deferred several capital items as we were prioritizing the capital plan, so you could look at those items again, see if you want to utilize the saved funds for that. I also know there are other vehicle needs throughout the city, but we've already highlighted the need to support the police department with their vehicles. It's really at your discretion if you want to give us direction in that regard. To pursue another new vehicle with the police department, timing is of the essence in the sense that you need to hit the order banks and ensure that we can receive the vehicle with an appropriate amount of time. We'd be happy to talk about this and bring something back as far as senior staff goes, or if you'd like to give us direction tonight, it's really kind of your prerogative.
Do we have any thought about that?
Talk about it and bring what they need the most. from
Yeah.
whatever department.
Okay. I know.
What vehicles are needed still at the police department? Are you new hires in that? How many are you needing?
So there is a need for our victim witness unit to get a replacement vehicle so they can have a vehicle where they can transport victims and families if they need to be displaced overnight and transported to domestic violence shelter or somewhere in town or out of town. That's probably the next important need that I can see. And we do have other vehicles that we purchased one last year, one new one, Brian?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. So it's, you know, we can look to see, we can make something work, but that would be the next priority is get victim witness a vehicle that they can use without a cage so they can accommodate luggage and car seats and stuff like that.
Much different than what we're looking for with the prisoner transport. All right, well, I just wanted to float that idea out there. Any other discussion about the purchase of the Chevy, not the Sprinter, regrettably? They do have those still. Just saying. All in favor of passage of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. I vote aye. We'll see if this Chevy can do 400,000 miles, live up to its predecessor. All right, consultant selection, financial and operational feasibility study for a multi-sport facility. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be very brief. Essentially, the community and city officials have been looking at the addition of a new multi-sport facility in Riverton. Two very important questions come forward, and that is what would be the cost to construct the facility? And the next important question is what would be the cost to maintain and operate the facility? If such a facility is constructed, it's possible that it would support indoor soccer, ice hockey, indoor track, and other activities to be determined. Very possible that this facility would be operated by the city of Riverton, and as such, I think it's in the city's best interest to have a very clear understanding of the long-term feasibility of operating a facility like this so that it stays open for the community. I think the last thing that anyone in our community wants is to build something and not be able to keep it open. To that end, the city of Riverton received grant funds from the USDA to explore a feasibility study. City of Riverton also, you as a council, prioritized funds in the fiscal year 25 budget to perform a feasibility study. City staff advertised and solicited statements of qualifications to perform a market analysis and financial and operational feasibility study for the said recreation facility. I was very pleased that we received 8 proposals. It was good to see so many firms interested in providing the service. A selection committee was prepared of 2 members of the city council and 1 city staff member. And as each of those individuals individually rated the proposals and then collectively confirmed their ranking, it's proposed that BK Associates be placed as the most qualified firm to perform this work. The second most qualified firm was the Sports Facilities Company, and the third was CSL International. There's a full list of all the proposals in your packet, and each of you have received the submittals of qualification as well. Staff recommends, and it is also the recommendation of the selection committee, to direct staff to confirm the references of the top prioritized firms, and if references come back appropriate, to begin negotiations with the top prioritized firm to develop a scope of work and a contract to perform the feasibility study. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion, I guess, to do exactly what Mr. Butterfield had said, which is to consider the top 3 that have been noted, BK and Associates, Sports Facility Companies, and CSL International, in that order, and refer to references, and then go from there as to actually entering into negotiations with them, subject to references coming back positively.
So moved.
Motion by Councilwoman Cox, second by Councilwoman Salisbury. Any other discussion? I looked at these, by the way, and we have some, they're good. Good groups. I think we'd be well served.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Those top 3, I've worked in Colorado and Minnesota and Wyoming, Illinois, and Missouri. The bottom is Illinois, California, Florida, California, and Utah. It appears that it would be nicer to have somebody from Wyoming, not for that reason, but that the feasibility study of local people versus somebody from a distance that doesn't understand Wyoming is problematic.
I hear you, and that's a very good point. I mean, even Colorado, right? They're very different than Wyoming.
Well, I have a lot of people interested in moving from Colorado, for some reason I don't know, to Wyoming.
Who'd have thunk? I don't know either.
Yeah, they're fed up with it.
So, but I will say that each of these do have experience with projects in Wyoming, even the Floridians. And so I agree with you in theory. I like the idea of preference for Wyoming-based firms or firms that have a Wyoming base.
Yeah.
I think the motion as it stands gives enough flexibility for staff to be able to make whatever adjustments they need to, but I agree. I think the numbers really kind of spoke for themselves there in terms of CSL being in third, but yeah, I think we'd be well served by any of them based on the experience that they had. You'd be surprised. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, the sports facilities companies was the one that had done some work on
Casper.
Casper, their new
Sports Ranch.
Yeah, Wild Sports Ranch. So I agree, but I think we give that flexibility to staff.
Correct.
So, sounds good. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 I say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Payment to the Riverton Depot Foundation Riverwalk and Land Promissory Note. Mr. Butterfield again.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think it's appropriate to provide a little bit of back information and history on this item. In the early 2000s, some community members really started spearheading a vision for the south end of Riverton, specifically adjacent to the river. And two of those members are in the audience tonight, and I think we need to really recognize Alan and Terry Ann Moore, not just for this, but for the many things that they do for our community. And it's appropriate to thank and recognize them for everything that they do. They are really the visioning force behind the Riverwalk Trail and the property associated with the Riverwalk. In the early 2000s, they decided to create a committee to find a way to create recreation space along the Wind River. And through a partnership with the Depot Foundation, plus or minus 150 acres of land was purchased with the sole idea of creating a pathway and creating an area for people in Riverton to go to enjoy the river. The city of Riverton became involved in this project in 2009, and there's an agreement included in your packet where the Depot Foundation and the city of Riverton came to an agreement to secure public access to the plus or minus 150 acres procured by the Depot Foundation. Conditions of that agreement were that the city would pay $2,000 a month in fiscal year 10 to ensure that the public could have access to this land, and then also that the Depot Foundation would promise that the funds provided by the city would go towards the payment of the promissory note, and then also other improvements and costs related to holding the property. Since that time, the city of Riverton has contributed $2,000 a month to support the Depot Foundation and this vision of creating the Riverwalk. In 2010, correspondence between Mr. Alan Moore and then also the city administrator at the time, Carter Napier, confirmed the intention of the city of Riverton and the Depot Foundation to transfer the property held by the Depot Foundation to the city of Riverton once the balance of the mortgage on the property was paid in full. And that wasn't the end of it. Shortly after that agreement or correspondence, the city of Riverton and the Depot Foundation partnered together with the state of Wyoming to receive grant funds that eventually led to the creation of the Riverwalk and its pavement. There have been subsequent improvements through the years, all with the support of these great community members. That includes the fire pit and amphitheater, it includes a new gazebo, it includes the dog park, and so many other things. Since fiscal year 10, the city has made $362,000 in payments to the Riverton Depot Foundation for the promissory note associated with the land that they hold. Roughly $289,600 has gone towards paying the bank note, and roughly $72,400 has gone to support improvements and then also the management costs associated with holding the land. The original note for the land was issued at $198,296. However, it was refinanced, again, with a great partnership between the Depot Foundation and the city to cover additional costs associated with the pavement of the Riverwalk. That was a refinance to bring about $51,000 to support that project. So the total borrowing for this area is $249,574.61. The interest rate associated with this note is prime plus and currently sits at 7.8%. The outstanding balance is a little over $63,000. The Depot Foundation and the City of Riverton have explored ways to be more efficient in paying down the mortgage, especially with the high interest rate. After several options were explored, the preferred option was to immediately pay off the note and work on the aforementioned transition. The City of Riverton currently has funds in its fiscal year 25 budget to pay off the outstanding balance of the note. Should the City Council decide to utilize those funds to pay off the note, provisions of the land transfer would need to be finalized between the Depot Foundation and the City of Riverton. I also think it's important that both entities work together on the future long-term vision associated with that land. Personally, I think it would be very helpful to have an advisory committee or individuals appointed in an advisory role from the Depot Foundation or other areas of the community to work directly with the city on how to envision the use of the Riverwalk property. It may even be valuable to ensure that we hire an entity to do a long-term master plan for that area so that we can be very strategic in improving the land that now we're at 25 years basically of the Moores steering this, and we're so appreciative of that. And we want to make sure that their vision is protected as it moves forward. I also think it's appropriate for the city to budget funds in future fiscal years to ensure that improvements continue along the Riverwalk. One thing of note that the Depot Foundation and the City of Riverton should work on through this transition process is also coordination with the County Commission, because there are still some parcels of land that should be part of the Riverwalk that are currently held by Fremont County. I had a conversation with the chairperson of the County Commission, and they're very willing to speak with us about those future land transactions. With that history in mind and also a little bit of explanation of what you're considering, I'll be more specific about the funds that could be allocated towards paying off the balance of this note. In the preparation of the fiscal year 25 budget, there were funds allocated and prepared for improvements at City Park. It was anticipated that the City of Riverton would receive a significant grant to support these improvements, over $1.6 million in funds. Unfortunately, the city did not receive this grant. However, the matching funds that were set aside to match the grant are currently unobligated. They're at $188,700. Staff proposes that you utilize these current budgeted funds to pay off this note and allow us to move forward with the transition of property, envisioning with the Depot Foundation, and maybe more importantly, to avoid paying a high interest rate on this note. Other information is included in your packet, and I'm happy to stand for any questions, but it is staff's recommendation that we pay off the outstanding funds with current budgeted funds.
Sounds good. So is the plan to call it the Clifford Allen Moore and Terry Ann Moore Riverwalk property is?
Your Honor, I apologize. I brought a little bit too much levity into this meeting, but I proposed that we had bronze statues made, and they turned it down for some reason.
Is $120,000 enough to get a bronze statue?
Depends on where you get your pennies.
Well, I would have to say that there's people, I think, in every community that are kind of, I don't know how to describe them other than they're like a pillar, you know? They're a basis that the community is able to work around, and they just do so much to add to the community. And I certainly appreciate the work that the Moores have put into this, and it really adds to our community to have it. And I'm just excited, and I hope that we can make good in terms of having that property be something that you'd be proud of into the future, because that's the vision. So, All right, I'd entertain a motion to authorize the use of existing fiscal year 2025 budgeted funds to pay the balance of the loan for the Riverwalk property through the Riverton Depot Foundation.
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Borders with the motion, Councilwoman Cox with the second. Any other discussion? Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vote aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Well, thank you for having the vision for the property. I'm excited. I like it. That would be what we would have as the quote under the plaque, right? That's under the bronze statue. You're going to have to come up here, Alan.
I think the bronze statue is out of the question. Some time ago, the city was contemplating some statuary, which they did build, and they asked for suggestions. And being somewhat of a history buff, I knew that in this area, with the river and with the trappers and the 1843 rendezvous and the beaver, that in my mind, the most likely thing that would leave an image in the minds of tourists would be a great bronze statue of a mountain man holding a beaver by the tail and a club in the other hand. So I don't think that that would be appropriate.
We could use you as a model, though. That could be.
I've already been used as a model for Jabba the Hutt. So, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. All right. Next up, optional half-cent or per-cent excise tax discussion. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. This agenda item is really for your discussion and use. I'll provide a few points of information, but staff stands ready to provide further detail as you discuss this issue. I won't go through the history of the 0.5% because we already did that last meeting. And as we all know, the optional 0.5% failed its renewal at the ballot on November 5th, 2024. Because of that, you as a council and governing body have some decisions to make. You, as the governing body, have full authority and responsibility over the use of the optional 0.5% tax. To assist you with that stewardship, you created the Evolve, Diversify, and Grow Our Economy Committee. That committee expires on its own terms December 31st, 2024. In light of the ballot initiative and its result, the council should choose to either disband that committee, let it expire on its own terms, or appoint a new committee at the start of the new calendar year. I'm sure that decision will be contingent on how you choose to utilize the remaining funds and the future funds that will be collected before the tax completely expires. It was previously communicated that the tax would cease at the end of the calendar year and the city would receive those funds through likely February. We have received additional information that the tax will be collected through March, which means the city will receive revenue from the tax through May. If we look at calendar year 2024 to project future collections, you as a council should anticipate having roughly an additional $430,000 of the discretionary 70% portion of the tax to allocate. Wind River Transit Authority and the Fremont Air Service team have already expressed interest in receiving additional contributions from that 70% discretionary portion of the tax. Each entity has requested that so that they can ensure the long-term sustainability of ground transportation and air transportation until another revenue option can either be brought forward to the people or other options can be explored outside of a ballot initiative. Members of the EDGE Committee or other members of the community may also request that those funds be committed to local businesses or other initiatives similar to how you've utilized the 70% portion of the tax. EDGE recently reviewed and prioritized funding applications from the September advertising period, and those are included in your packet for your information. I believe that's enough of a rundown of the information in the packet. Staff would again stand to answer any questions that you have as you discuss how you would like to handle the optional 0.5% funds that are under your stewardship.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, this is something that we all knew could happen. I mean, that the tax wouldn't pass. Part of why I wanted to have this discussion, a couple of reasons. First off, the county disbanded their MOVE committee. I believe in speaking with Commissioner Jones, I think part of it was in recognition that the 0.5-cent tax, the major criticisms of it were that it was money going to private enterprises, right? And so I think as far as they were concerned, the MOVE committee, part of the mission was to be able to determine which private enterprises would receive funds and what amounts, review all the applications, much the same as our EDGE committee has. And so my thought process has been, if we've had direction that's given to us by the voters, that the criticism has been money given to private businesses, that it would make sense to pull away from that and pivot, which we've been doing the whole time. And it makes me laugh that there's been any criticisms of it when we've been trying to be responsive, I mean, to anything that's been said. I mean, I specifically remember Councilwoman Cox and Councilwoman Salisbury with the first approval of EDGE funding saying, hey, we want to have something for recreation. That's what people have been understanding, and we want to make sure it's done. So we did. We've had quite a bit of money that's gone to recreation for purchase of property, anything, and it's been varied. It's been soccer, it's been hockey, it's been all of it. So, so the thought process that I had was, right now we have enough money for the airport to continue for about a year, maybe a little more, depending on where we come in on the MRG. Half, not quite 500,000, but something in the neighborhood of 500,000 could make a huge impact on that. WRTA is really considering their future. Both of those are not private enterprise. They're akin, I think, to addressing infrastructure needs. I mean, we've basically, the airport is our highway in the sky. WRTA, of course, is able to increase the ability to have connectivity throughout the county. That being said, we have, and in the audience, have a couple of the applicants for EDGE that have put in quite a bit of work, including the application itself, presenting more than once, being willing to come and talk to us again. We know right now, because of the money that was paid to the airport, we have about $2,000 right now. Well, unobligated, I guess I should say, something in the neighborhood of that. So I just wanted to have the discussion. Do we want to continue to have EDGE? Do we want to, which also we have our hardworking EDGE committee chair in the audience, Mr. Kosarog, who has been very willing to put in a lot of work for us, and I appreciate it. So I just wanted to say, what do we want to do? How do we want to adjust? I'm of the opinion that I've expressed my opinion, I think, but I just think we need to have that discussion and get some consensus from the council. Or even if not consensus, have a vote and decide on where we're going.
Your Honor.
Yes.
When this came up, I think a couple of years ago, what would we do with the remaining balance? I was against giving it to the airport only because I wanted to give it to the people that were voting in hopes that it would, you know, encourage them to vote yes for it the next time. When people were talking about it this year and the vote was coming up, I stressed how important this was to the airport. I mean, the fact that we've had 17,000 passengers this year, it's doing great, and I'd hate to see it go downhill now. I mean, I voted no for it the last time because I wanted to keep it going so we'd have another 4 years of that income for them. But I think that the airport is the most important thing right now, and so I would vote yes this time to support the airport.
Your Honor, as it comes to return on investment, the airport has been one of the pillars of that for not just the citizens of Riverton, but also for the entire county. So my vote would be to support the airport.
So that you're both, if I'm hearing from both of you, your proposal would be that the remaining unobligated funds until we finish collecting in May would be to have that go to the airport.
Your Honor, statistically, we get a running report from the airport on a monthly basis. And if you graph that, it is going straight up at a 60-degree angle. That is money returning to the community. There is no other factors involved about not the planes flying, or they didn't decide the mushrooms could grow that way, or they are not hiring part-time but full-time but sometime. So I'm thinking that we need to support something that is a sure thing. The people that I have talked to were not angry at us giving money to the hospital or to the airport. They were angry at the building that was too short to have a coffee roaster in it, etc. So until we can get FCAG and some other people writing the rules, I think this money should go where it does the most good, the airport or the hospital, either one.
Councilwoman Salisbury?
Yes, I called several of the people in the EXCISE group that echoed what he said. They didn't mind the hospital or the airport. They would have voted for it had it been designed for that, and they don't want to go into private business either. I just think it's going to be difficult for the city moving forward because the money that was providing different things will now be coming out of the city budget. Some of the general fund things are going to have to pick up a lot of things that we were able to give raises to our law enforcement. I mean, it's going to take a chunk of our operating fund. So I'm for it going towards the airport as well, or if the hospital needs more, either one.
And I think, I guess,
I don't think we need to keep the committee either. Right? I mean, when you asked if we disband it, I would say probably disband it so you don't waste their time if we don't have the intention on moving on some of the recommendations.
you're the only one who hasn't spoken yet, Councilwoman Borders.
I concur with what everyone said. I'm just kind of, with Lynn sitting here in the audience, I'm curious as to how he feels about it. All right.
Come on up, Leo.
I'm gonna need more than 5 minutes. I'd like to, this is like a job evaluation because I'm
Yeah.
about to be fired no matter what here in like 5 months, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You're retiring.
Right. So I'd like to start off with just a big thank you to all the people that were on the committee for so long. Marissa Selvig, all the way back to Mayor Gard, Brett Watson, so many people that helped out. Tony, we got to write the rules. So many of the municipalities copied our bylaws, our application. Few things I'd like to remind is that I always tried to keep the idea that it wasn't our job to necessarily look at projects
for reasons to pass the tax, to not pass the tax. The tax had been passed. The voters said yes. It was our obligation to be stewardships of that money to those projects. So that would be one argument that I would have against it, is you're not answering to the voters that have said no to it in the future. You are answering to the voters that said yes to it in the past. And they said yes to 70% to these projects. Another thing is yes, the hospital was a great thing. The amount of diversification that we've had in our projects has been spectacular for manufacturings. There's been a few blunders, absolutely. There was learning curves, things like that. But the success of many shouldn't be faulted by the failures of a few. In the applications that we have before you, I think it is very pertinent that you guys answer to them. They have gone through committee. They have been presented. You need to, in my mind, discuss and tell them no or yes. You can't just disband and then give the money away and go, oh, no money. You need to address those. Within those applications, there is a healthcare one that specifically targets post-healthcare from a hospital. We could build the greatest hospital in the world. As soon as people leave, if there's no care at their home, things like that. So I do think you guys owe it to the past voters that said yes to this to honor that 70% and at least look at the applications and go through them and do their due diligence. I do believe there will be value or monies left over after those. And then I do say, yes, you can put them wherever you'd like. You could reset us up and we could open another application period and go that way. But let's at least bring it home and give the work to the people that have already done it.
I appreciate that. That's and I think your idea in terms of being aware that you're not answering to future voters, but to voters from 2020 that approved it with the 70% discretionary, I can.
I'd also like to say that whether it goes to the hospital, whether it goes to the airport, it is an MRG. SkyWest is a private entity. I know that is one of the biggest things that people did not like it going to private projects. The transportation side, WRTA does get a lot and they are public, but it does not just go to WRTA, it goes to ground transportation. WRTA just happens to receive most of it. So whether it's going to the airport or a lot of things, it does go to private. And it is hard because I support the airport 100%. I do think we're going to have some serious decisions to make in a year to try to figure out how to fund going into the future, and this would help prolong it. But again, as this was part of the 70%, I think you need to seriously evaluate the applications that have already gone forward before. Then again, you're not answering to anything of, forget that there was even a vote on it. This was to the voters of 2020, and these applications have gone through committee. As far as the committee, again, let us disband now. If you guys vote for it, at the end of the year, you'd have to reseat us anyway, so that decision could be up. But as I'm still in the position of chair, I am still fighting for these applicants that have done the work, and like I said, let's bring it home.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And I think one point to make is that as we're looking at this, these are future funds right now because the balance is pretty low that we would be looking at. There's no reason why we couldn't consider this again in April in terms of where the funds would go. I mean, I hear everybody in terms of the airport. I share that sentiment because I think until we get some other solution figured out, we want to keep commercial air going. I guess to be on the record because people have been rumors or whatever that the airport is shutting down. No. We have funds sufficient for commercial air to continue for at least a year and a half. Well, at least a year, maybe up to a year and a half. While we try to figure out where we go next. So the airport is running. and we are continuing to take passengers, would encourage you to be flying. We're just talking about being able to keep it going that way. And I appreciate that. So I guess what we could do today would be the motion then, I guess, would be whether to disband EDGE now or not. And then if we were to consider these applicants against the airport, we could do that once we get to the point of actually having more money in the funds that we can use. Mr. Butterfield?
Your Honor, and I think it's important information to bring forward that the account currently has $84,413. The November allocation was received, and Ms. Harris provided me that information right before the meeting. So of unobligated monies in the 70% portion, there's $84,413 as it sits today. As you see in your packet, the total recommended amount of the September application period through EDGE was $232,687.
And I guess, so I really do think that if we were going to be talking about this, because we don't have the funds right now to pay out to the EDGE applicants, that we could consider it when we have council members here, because we have 3 new council members coming in. And that would be maybe the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February, and go from there.
Your Honor, another thought that I had was we maybe tweak the amounts that were recommended and divvy it up with what we do have available.
Another thought.
That way we don't leave the applicants hanging for a few more months when they did these interviews in September.
Yeah, I know we have 2 of them here. You're welcome to come up and speak if you'd like. You're going to have to tell us your name.
My name's Kenesha Pullen, and I did ask for money. And I guess, for one, when I know what work I put into putting this together, and to wait to do it a couple more months, I mean, I had 5 different businesses have to come out to my property to measure and do bids. And just to think about doing that again and asking people to do that for me again when they're already so busy is really upsetting because it's not easy to get business people, electricians, plumbers, excavating people to come out to your property to do these things. And I am just one of many. There's some great applicants. And I think that I completely agree with when we filled out these applications, this is what the city is offering, this is what this half-cent tax is, and, I get a call at 4 o'clock this afternoon saying that it's not available, it's done, it's no longer going to happen. And so I can't speak for anyone else, but I don't understand how that happened like that. You guys are the city, and so it's kind of seems like you would have your stuff together and you would not let people do all this stuff to come to you and to present 2 times to a committee just to be called 3 hours before the meeting today to be told, sorry, And so, and I'm, mine's probably the least of, everybody. Mine was a lot of work, but there was a lot of people in here. There was a team of people that came in here for the healthcare. And I think it's really sad that it's just going to get dropped just because people are unhappy about how the money has been spent. I think that there's some very specific rules in place now. And if I take money from you, I'm very accountable to all of you, to the city of Riverton, and what I do with that money. I'm sorry that there were people that did not do that or whatever happened. But that wasn't us, you know? So I feel like we're also being punished, and I completely agree that it was, you know, we can't do it for the future, and I'm all for the airport as well. But, I mean, these were already on the table, and they got told 3 hours ago, well, now not 3 hours, but many more hours ago, 3 hours ago, that that was a complete nothing. So,
Well, and I'm sorry that that happened that way. I would take fault for that. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate that.
Your Honor, my thought going forward was not to surpass your applications. I was just thinking in the future as of December. I know that these are still on the table, and I just wasn't sure when we would talk about them again, if that will be in December. As far as I'm concerned, they're not off the table. I'm thinking January and on, those remaining funds that come in.
Right.
I mean, that hasn't been shut down. We haven't decided that yet.
Yeah. And the only, in the main communication that we were wanting to have with the applicants was, we can't grant money tonight because of the money that was granted to the hospital. So that's where we're at right now.
That was previously allocated.
Right, yep. Now, for yours, for example, you had asked for, or the recommended amount was $64,550. Theoretically, with the balance that we have, could be. Mr. Leaf Green, since you're the other applicants that's here, did you want to come up and say anything? You're with ETA.
Actually, Jeff Leaf Green is my partner. I'm John Cunningham.
John, I don't know why I said that.
So as far as Ethos Transportation, we provide quite a service to Fremont County, something that has been sought for Fremont County for quite some time until Ethos was developed and started doing the Title 25 transports. As we've shown in the packet, I think you might still have it, we're actually bringing money into the community through employment and other services provided through the maintenance of the vehicles, the fuel, the oil changes, any of that stuff. So I ask that you please don't just walk away from the applicants that have put in the time for this, because there's a reason we put in the time. We put it in, it's going to benefit the community as well as the business as well. So please take a few minutes, think about it before you walk away from it.
Your Honor, is this for, did you also put in it for Fremont County for this funding? Or
Not for the vehicle. No, the vehicles is what we do. We actually put in for, through Lander as well for the vehicles, because we have vehicles both in Riverton and in Lander. Lander would not provide any vehicles or buildings.
Did you get a grant from either MOVE or from?
Yeah, we got a grant from the county for a building, a shop to be able to store the vehicles in.
Okay.
Keep them out of the weather.
Good deal.
Your Honor, I just have a question for
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Cunningham.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
Or
for
ma'am.
speaking out. This is it's a tough, I hate these situations. But my question to you is, if we were to put this off until December, January, when we have more revenue come in, would that be okay with you? I mean,
Yeah, that's not gonna change a lot. When you were talking about actually reducing the funds, that could actually change quite a bit, because then we're gonna have to go out and pull out loans for the remainder of the vehicle. Right now, with the funds we have available, if we get what would have been allocated, I think we can probably purchase the vehicle in full immediately and be able to get it up and running. It's gonna take a few weeks for us to put the cages, the cameras, the radio equipment, that kind of stuff into the vehicles before we can have people start.
Ms. Pullen, if we didn't look at yours until December, I mean, I was just throwing out dates. Would your bids or whatever, your estimates still be valid then? I mean, I know it's sometimes 60 days depending.
right, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I would just have to call all of them and see. 'Cause
Well, Your Honor, we didn't have these on our agenda.
No, I know.
Get it
I'm not,
before the-
I'm just saying if it would still work. So, okay.
Well, it would, I mean, help is help. It would always work, but, I mean, I can still call everybody. It's just, we all know how that is. Like when you're asking somebody a favor to come out and do something for you, and then you have to re-ask them to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, to take time out of, because of their schedules to come do something for you that they're not getting paid for, so.
And your full amount was 239, and the recommended amount was 64,000. You'd still be able to do it with that, though.
Yeah, I mean, that, yeah, the committee was very specific about what they wanted, you know, what we would do.
As usual.
Yes.
Okay.
And how many new jobs are they bringing for both years?
Mine's well, and mine is a little different because mine isn't specific, and I was very honest with that because I want to hire people with disabilities. So I can hire a lot of people, but as full-time increments, I will not know that until I get started to see who can do time, you know, working outside and how that works.
So what would the equivalent full-time be?
I just said one because I don't feel like I could say three, and then what if I don't make that happen? One, I know I can make that happen.
Your Honor, point of order. I don't know that we can discuss specifics with two applicants that are here when it wasn't on the agenda to discuss it. I find that's a little bit unfair to the other applicants if we're going to discuss that with them later.
Well, anyway, thank you both for being here.
Thanks.
And I'm sorry I confused you for Mr. Leafgreen, Mr. Cunningham. I used to work with Ron a lot. I mean, you know that, and I recognize you from my work with the county attorney's office, but I don't know why it just, you were Leafgreen today.
Jeff's more obscure.
Yeah, he is.
And I'd like to kind of go off of Dean's thing there as far as getting it back on the agenda necessarily for each applicant so you can hear a lot of these details and understand the job equivalents and things like that. You can commit money that's not in the coffers as long as it's done percentage-based. This has been used before. We did it in the first year for the hospital. We also did it for FARO because it was one of the very, very first applications. So I guess what I see and recommend is possibly putting it on the agenda, listen to the applicants, because maybe you guys won't, I mean, we haven't always seen eye to eye. You haven't always funded everything that we've said. Go through them, give them their here, or at least read through them. If you guys want to, make sure that it happens with this council, or if you want to pass it on to the next council. Or make your recommendations based off percentages saying, hey, 87,000 not to exceed more than this percentage of the remaining funds. Because you can put a value as long as there's a percentage. And then once it's collected, then obviously the contract can be done. Of the projects, I think 2 of them probably are on a shorter timeline, or some of them probably could wait. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. All right, well, we don't have any motion. I know this has just been discussion. We don't have any motion right now, other than, I guess we do have to have some idea of what we want to be doing with EDGE. I mean, do we want to have them continue to serve, or are we going to basically have this be, if nothing else, the last funding period, since we're not going to be looking at that going forward?
Your Honor, I would like to suggest that we have these applicants be on the agenda for the first meeting in December, and then have them disband end of December like they would have normally, and then go forward.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So then we wouldn't have any motion, and it's just business as usual, except for putting on the agenda discussion of the EDGE applicants' first meeting in December.
Your Honor, we can put that on the agenda.
Sounds good. Okay, good. Thank you, everybody, for being willing to stick it out until 10 o'clock. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I don't think we need an executive session.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. I vote aye. Motion passes. We're adjourned at 10:01.
I don't even know if we have a meeting